Yo, welcome back to another video. We back in it. So, in order for us to, know about what is in the future, we must first learn about what came from the past. We gotta, we watching the night CM Punk left the WWE. This, video was made 5 months ago. Um, I'm thinking this video was made the day that CM Punk
What's the
was let
only thing
go of
in store was
AEW.
your love for your car? These Cooper and Duramaxes.
I really
Go with
feel
the
like they
Coopers.
messed up, bro. They
More
made a
power
show
helps the
centered
drives
all
to a
around
whole
CM
new
Punk.
level of recovery
Then they
with
let go of
42
CM Punk.
grams of protein.
Now CM Punk, he a free agent.
What's up everyone, it's me, it's Pav, and I'm back again with another video, and I'm
Let's
happy
see how
to
this
announce
goes.
that today's video is actually
I
sponsored
won't
by
talk as much.
HelloFresh. Figuring out what's for dinner is not at the top of anyone's summer. Last night, CM Punk made his long-awaited return to the wrestling ring, and the old man, despite the injuries and the drama, still has it. CM Punk is the most polarizing man in wrestling, and whether you love him or hate him, it's hard to deny the impact he has had on the wrestling business. And the question is, how long will this return last? A week? A month? A few years? We're gonna find out. But with all this talk about CM Punk returning, let's go back to a different time, before backstage fistfights and beef
Who
with
would have
best
thought?
friends, before there ever was an AEW. Let's go back to when it seemed like CM Punk was on top of the world in the WWE. 10 years ago, it was the Royal Rumble 2013, and after being WWE Champion for 434 days, the longest modern reign at the time, CM Punk finally lost the title to The Rock. And whether it was the right move or the wrong move, at the end of the day, this man, against all odds, was the champion for 434 days, a legendary achievement. But little did we know that in just 1 year after ending his historic reign at the very same pay-per-view, he would be gone from the WWE. And many wondered and questioned, how does the man who got pushed that hard leave the company in a year? How does someone who got so many opportunities and so many big matches just leave? Half of the fans understood it, and half of the fans called him an ungrateful bum. It was one of the most shocking departures in wrestling history that came out of nowhere. But to really understand the night CM Punk left, we begin all the way back in September of 2011. CM Punk had officially become the hottest star in the company. After almost leaving the company but re-signing the last minute and having that classic match with Cena, Punk was a made man. But somehow, the company turned the hottest storyline they had in years into nothing. In less than 2 months, and by September, CM Punk was no longer feuding against Cena or for the title. Instead, he was up against Triple H. And you would think they would have CM Punk, who had just become a true star, go over the 42-year-old part-timer who is now an EVP of the company, but nah. Just 3 months after setting the business on fire, Punk was losing to Triple H. There was no rematch, this was it. 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring. And the wild part was, in 2 months, CM Punk does win the title from Alberto Del Rio. It was as if, hey, before you go on to win the title, we have to humble you a little bit for that noise you made in the summer. But that loss right there to Triple H in 2 months after becoming the hottest star in the company and what was supposed to be the biggest run of his career, that is where the resentment started that would lead to him leaving in 2014. But anyway, CM Punk does become champion and the fans love it, and it was a big deal. And I don't think anyone expected him to get a 434-day reign, but that's exactly what we got. But the issue was, as everyone knows, Punk was not the guy despite holding the company's ultimate prize. Over the next few months, the title that was this magical thing that the company cared so much about in the past just became a prop. And very rarely did CM Punk get to defend the title in the main event of a pay-per-view. Very rarely did the title feel like the WWE Championship. Now, was Punk gonna headline over Cena versus Rock at WrestleMania, or Cena versus Lesnar in April of 2012? No, of course not. But for so many months, they did the title and they did CM Punk dirty. Hey, CM Punk is defending the title in an Elimination Chamber. Nah, let's have Cena versus Kane in an ambulance match headline the show. Bro, it's 2012. Who cares about Cena versus Kane? It's over the limit. Punk versus Bryan is going to be a banger. Nah, Cena versus Laurinaitis in one of the worst matches ever should still main event. And it just kept going and going. And yeah, you could argue, oh, Bryan versus Punk is not main event material. So why didn't they give him stuff that was main event material? He was the WWE champion. And as time went on, CM Punk sure was the champion, but they were treating this man like he was just another B-level champion. Now obviously Punk was doing the best he could. He was still having banger matches, the crowd still loved him. Every night he was either the loudest reaction or the second loudest reaction. And even though the company wasn't treating him how you would think they would treat a guy who had been champion for half a year, he was still the people's champion, no offense to The Rock. He was gaining this cult-like following which remains to this day. It was the work that he put in during this reign which is why he's still the household name that he is. For the first half of 2012, CM Punk was doing his thing, and in July of 2012, to spice things up, they had him turn heel and attack The Rock. And as the year ended, he did get main event feuds finally against the likes of Ryback, who he later blamed for being an unsafe worker who caused him many injuries over the years. And by the time we circle back to Rumble 13, the night he lost the title, Punk was a mess. The injuries had gotten out of control. Those 434 days of being champion, they took a toll on his body. In 2012 alone, he wrestled 179 matches. So every other day he was wrestling. So it was clear to see how even though he had the reign, even though it seemed like he was on top of the world, he was miserable. By the time 2013 arrived, he had suffered a partially torn meniscus and had to miss the 2012 TLC pay-per-view, in which he was supposed to have a TLC match against Ryback. He skipped the pay-per-view to get surgery, and just 1 month later after the surgery, the WWE in his first match back put him back in the TLC match. There was no easing it in, there was no like, oh, let's take some precautions and then we'll do the TLC match. Nah, straight up TLC with Ryback on an episode of Raw. And you can see how that would make someone feel tilted.
Are you in?
Yeah.
I didn't even know how this.
Cents per month for a year.
Shut up and take my money.
Hulu's Black Friday.
Shut up and take my money. Whenever I see CM Punk.
After losing the title, his last year in the company was an interesting man. In the eyes of the fans, CM Punk was legitimately in God mode. See, in 2013, he had a top 5 Raw match of all time against Cena, where they absolutely tore the house down. And then he had a WrestleMania Classic with The Undertaker, the match of the night at the biggest show of the year, a match that nobody will ever forget. He had an insanely hype return in his hometown in June where he defeated Jericho, and another classic with Brock Lesnar, in my eyes and a lot of people's eyes, a legit 5-star match. So for everyone watching, whether we were CM Punk fans or not, it was like, holy shit, this guy is the man. Every night he's going off, he's delivering. It seemed like he was in the prime, if anything. But that couldn't have been further from the truth, because the issue was, that's not how it was for Punk. Punk at this point was still a mess. He was dealing with so many injuries, and he was still bitter at the fact that he did not main event WrestleMania. He felt that he should have been in the main event of WrestleMania 29. He felt that he deserved it and he earned it after having that historic reign. And honestly, it's a sentiment that a lot of fans had back then and still have to this day, and I think he was bitter at this point because the realization hit him that if after 2011 and setting the business on fire, if after 2012 and having that historic reign and he still couldn't main event WrestleMania, the realization hit him that he probably never will. He was mad at the fact that he put on a classic with Taker at Mania and was getting a bunch of praise, but he never got even paid close to what Taker, Cena, Rock, Triple H, and Lesnar were getting paid. He was mad that he finally got time off to heal after Mania just for the company to call him and beg him to come back early for Payback because the pay-per-view was in Chicago and it wasn't going to sell out without CM Punk. He was mad at Ryback injuring him again in 2013, giving him a concussion and broken ribs. He was mad at losing every big match he was in, and even though he was putting in so much work, he was mad that he had to lose to Lesnar after already putting over a part-timer earlier in the year. And the thing is, you can definitely play devil's advocate here. It's like, hey, Punk, did you really think you were going to beat Lesnar? Did you really think that was the right move? Do you really think that you would have ended the streak, etc., etc.? But you got to realize from his perspective, at the end of the day, he is just a man who's going to work, who feels like he's getting disrespected, like the short end of the stick. I don't think him losing to Lesnar was the issue. It was everything that led up to it. And then it's like, hey, can you go do us this favor and, put over Lesnar? In his eyes, he was not getting the respect that he deserves. He wasn't getting paid what he thinks he deserves. And even though he was putting up numbers, wrestling injured, doing everything he can do to help the company, he wasn't getting the respect he deserved in his opinion. And at the end of the day, you gotta look at it like this. It's no different than if me and you at our jobs, if we were getting clapped. I can see why people hated on Punk for his complaints here, I get it, but you have to realize that as a professional who is very good at their job, he would be a sucker if he didn't feel like this. If he just sat around and was like, just whatever, then he would be a loser. He wanted to be the best, he wanted to be treated like one of the best, but he never truly was. As great as the CM Punk run was from 2011 to 2013, realistically, it could have been 10 times better. But at the end of 2013, going into 2014, Punk, who re-signed in 2011 because now he thought his voice would matter, that now things would be different, was left a broken down, angry, cranky man who did not love what he was doing anymore. And little did we know that going into the 2014 Royal Rumble, it was going to be the last time we ever saw him in a WWE ring.
Until now.
This show is infamous in a lot of ways, but most notably for the ending, where the returning Batista came back and won the match and the fans booed like crazy because everyone watching at the time really wanted this to be Daniel Bryan's WrestleMania. But before the ending, before the crowd turned on the match, it was CM Punk that started the match at number 1. It was his last match ever and he went out there for 49 minutes, almost an hour, and he did his thing. But the wild part was, even though this ended up being his last match, he had no intention going into this match of this being the last one. He actually saw the Royal Rumble as one more chance to show the company that he deserved a higher spot on the ladder. He told himself, I'm going to change their minds. I'm going to have this awesome Royal Rumble and they're going to be like, God damn, alright, Punk needs to be in the main event. He hasn't been in the main event before, in reference to a WrestleMania main event. So Punk went in there motivated and he went in there with the intention of putting on a special performance, but as we know, that is definitely not what happened. After an innocent clothesline from Kofi Kingston, that was the moment where everything changed. I remember watching this match and not noticing anything, that everything was fine, nobody was injured, nothing happened, but in reality, CM Punk, after getting hit with that clothesline, he was concussed, he had no idea where he was, what was happening, and he was almost out like a light. So according to Punk, he went to the corner and he told the ringside doctor about the concussion, and Punk says the doc simply replied, "What do you want me to do?" As Punk lay there not knowing what was next, what to do, word got backstage that Punk was injured and the WWE sent out Corporate Kane to take out Punk from the match. But they didn't have Kane just take him out, do a move or two and that was it. They had Kane take him out of the ring, and CM Punk, who was clearly concussed and was out of it, they had Kane chokeslam him through an announce table. Just toss him in there, leave him for dead, a dead Phil Brooks. And at the time watching this, it just felt like it was a part of the storyline. Nothing seemed weird about it, nothing seemed different. We're like, alright, I guess the build of the Authority versus CM Punk is starting now. But nah, he was taken backstage and that was going to be his last night on TV.
Damn.
Unhappy, tired, injured, dead, unmotivated, CM Punk had enough. The next night on Raw, he showed up backstage and had a private meeting with Triple H and Vince, where he said to Vince, "You have shackled me, you have creatively stifled me, you've made this into a very toxic environment, I no longer want to be here." And then he told Triple H that he does not want to wrestle him at WrestleMania, which was the original plan that year, and then said, "I seriously resent you for not putting me over 3 years ago when you should have," referring back to Night of Champions 2011. Vince even said, "Aw pal, it's the concussion talking," but CM Punk had enough. After hugging Vince and shaking hands with Triple H, he left the room and he was officially gone. Just over 2 years after the pipe bomb, after the legendary Money in the Bank match, after a 434-day title reign, he left. I remember finding this out as it happened and just being in shock. I was never the biggest CM Punk fan, but he made wrestling fun, he made it interesting, and many times he made it must-watch TV. And I really thought this was just a bump in the road, that he would be back, that maybe in 2015, maybe later in the year, that he would return, but he never did. And while I was making this video, it really hit me that when Punk left the WWE in 2014, it was honestly an end of an era. The early 2010s were not the best years of wrestling, but the one bright spot was CM Punk. He brought back so many fans into wrestling in 2011. I remember the older kids in my school were watching wrestling again because CM Punk made it cool again. He made wrestling exciting again for a period of time. He revived the WWE in 2011, and that 2-year run made him into a legend and gave us memories that we will love forever as people who grew up watching that era. Whether you love him or hate him, you're never gonna forget the feeling of watching a prime CM Punk come out in 2011 or 2012 or 2013, especially if it's in Chicago. You're never gonna forget the promos, the mic work, the moments, just everything. This was his prime, and even though backstage, little did we know he was miserable and he hated everything about it, as fans, this was a special time to be a wrestling fan. In a time where the product was very rough, CM Punk was our savior. And what sucked about him leaving at Royal Rumble 2014 was we never got the closure. He never got the proper goodbye. We never got the proper goodbye. It wasn't the ending fitting for someone who gave us so much joy, who gave so much to wrestling, who revived wrestling, which is why when he popped up at AEW, it was so special. And now, after all the beefs and the dramas over AEW, he's back again, and the crazy thing is, the magic is still there. And now maybe, just maybe, this time, we finally get a happy ending in the CM Punk journey. Because of regardless of what you think, this man means a lot to professional wrestling.
Damn. No, it's crazy. Thanks to all y'all for watching. I appreciate y'all.